Okay, how's that for sound? Am I any better now? We have some sound now? Good morning. How are you doing? Holy cow. I'm so sorry, Dimitro. I was having a little trouble with my other microphone. How's the sound coming through now? Is it better? I was having a little trouble last class. I remember I switched that out. Okay. Cool. Good to see everybody. It's July 12th. I'm coming to you from West Institution from my friend's attic, where I will be staying for the next couple of weeks. It is good to see everybody in class. Dimitro, Johanna, and oh, we have a couple more people. I don't know who else is in here, but thanks to you for showing up this morning. Today's a big day, July 12th. I don't know if any of you are space nerds, but the James Webb Telescope, which has been 25 years, I think, in development and production, will finally be seeing the first pictures from this telescope released to the public today. I don't know if you folks are interested in nerdy stuff like that, but I'm totally looking forward to that today to see some cool space pictures. It's great to see everybody. So, anybody got plans for the weekend? What you got going on this weekend, Dimitro? You taking your daughter out somewhere fun? Johanna, you gonna leave the house today, or you, this weekend, or are you just gonna camp out at the place? So, all right, fantastic. Well, let's go ahead. All right. Now, as you folks probably know, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but maybe you've never actually seen the data. Here are the data that are showing both sex differences in earning power and also the impact of having a college education on your earning power. And so what you're going to see is along the x-axis we have the number of years of education completed. Along the y-axis we have the average annual income, and you'll see that the green bars are for women and the purple bars are for men. And what you'll see is that as you move through at least some college to getting that 4-year degree, your earning power definitely increases. You see as the bars move from left to right, they are getting higher, which suggests that in education definitely is a positive factor in your earning power. And of course, as you see, the green bars seem to be lower than the purple bars at all levels, demonstrating what we typically see as the sex difference in earning power. But let's talk more specifically about today's world. Is a college education really worth it? There are a lot of things that factor into it now. A college education can, if you go to a 4-year school for 4 years, I mean, we're talking $60, $70, $80,000 for an education. And there are some college graduates who are underemployed, as it says down here. And so we have a lot of students, a lot of college graduates that are working as baristas is the big joke, or waiting tables, or just not achieving economically. No sound again? You've got sound now though, right? You've got sound again, right? Hello, hello, hello. You can probably hear me now. I remember yes, okay, yeah. I've got to make that change. I'm sorry, I had to make a system change earlier this morning and I forgot. It's going to affect every slide that I go through. Okay. So, can somebody tell me, why do you think that people with college degrees get underemployed? How is it that you can have a college degree and still not have a what you might call a career job? Do you have any reasons why that might happen? How many of you think a 4-year college degree is worth it? Because I notice all of you are in a certificate program. Why did you choose a certificate program instead of a 4-year degree? Actually, that's the question. Why did you choose a certificate program or a 2-year program instead of a 4-year program? And I'll go ahead. Too many people have a college degree. Yeah, right. Too many people do have college degrees. That's a good point, Noda. It seems like you need a college degree to do anything these days, too. Why did you folks choose a 2-year degree rather than a 4-year degree? Because this class that you're taking is a 2-year track class, right? To save time and money. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, Noda, I imagine you're not 18 and you've got the daughter and you're married, so I would assume that you're probably paying for your own education right now, and $60,000, $80,000 is a lot to take away from the family budget. I could see that. Anybody else? I'd be curious in finding out why all of you are here in this class. And why is it, do you think, that females make so much less than men? Now, your book talks a little bit about workforce diversity, and it talks about the labor force and what we find. And I didn't realize this, but there are more males in the labor force than there are females. Good morning, Eva Lessa. But they say more women are joining the labor force, even women with young children. Why do you think women sexism? You think it's just straight out sexism, huh? Probably, Noda. I would agree. So I wonder, why do you think women with young children, do you think they're doing it out of a sense of need or a sense of desire to have economic value? What is it that's driving women with young children? Actually, some of you are ladies with young children. What are you doing in the workforce right now? Workforce is becoming more ethnically diverse, and but as your book says, gay and lesbian workers still do face discrimination in the workplace. Noda, when we were talking about sexism, we talk about this idea of a glass ceiling, which is sort of this invisible barrier that keeps women and ethnic minorities from advancing to the highest levels of occupations. Do you think this glass ceiling still exists? Have any of you ever had any experience where you ladies had any experiences where you felt like you weren't promoted and some less talented guy was given the promotion simply because he was a guy? They also talk about the sticky floor phenomenon, which I've never heard before I read it in this textbook, which is the tendency of women and minorities to be stuck in the low-paying occupations, a lot of service jobs and whatnot. So, percentage of the labor force. So, here's what you see. Women's participation in the labor force. What you'll see, percentage of the labor force is made up by women and men in 1990 and 2018. And you're still going to see that there's more men in the labor force. I wonder why that is. Anybody have any idea why more men are in the labor force than females? And as you can see down here, we have increases in Hispanic, and Black and Asian minorities in our labor force as well. Now, okay. Okay. Good morning, Caleb. It's good to see you. Good to see you. I was just messing with my camera a little bit. Sorry, folks. So, how many of you, so what I'd like to talk briefly about your occupational hazards at the workplace, and some people wonder why some jobs are higher stress than other jobs. Okay, and so what you're looking at here in front of you is a model of why people feel stressed out from their jobs. And this fellow, John Karasek, argues that if we want to talk about what makes a job stressful, we have to think about the qualities of the job. Some jobs are inherently more stressful than others. And why is that? He argues that you can think about the qualities that make a job stressful are whether or not, or the psychological demands of the job, how hard, how tricky, how challenging the job is, and how much control you have in managing what happens in that job. So, sort of, if you're at the top and you get to make all the decisions, you have a lot of decision control. If you are in the middle and you have to do what the and let's say, and if you're at the bottom of the ladder, and you're just a frontline employee, you can choose to come to work or not come to work because you don't necessarily have to be at that job. And who's in the middle is the person that has the least amount of control, because you're the middle manager. You're being told by your boss what you need to do, and you have to control employees that don't necessarily want to be controlled by you. So what Karasek says is, if we want to look at a job and figure out what kinds of jobs are more stressful than others, think about how psychologically demanding the job is and how much control you have over the outcomes in the job. And so look at this chart right here. Right here. And so you can look at which jobs are going to cause the most job stress. Now, what kind of job do you have when you're looking on here? Where are you? I would say that I'm somewhere sort of let's see, a secondary school teacher might probably be me. Maybe go a little bit. Mine might be more psychologically demanding than a school secretary teacher, but I have a high decision control. I get to decide exactly what happens in my job. I get to do the exams just the way I want to. I get to do my lectures when I want to and how I want to. So I have a lot of decision control, and my job is fairly challenging. How many of you are in settings where you have no decision control, where you have to do what you're being told, where you have to do it exactly how you're being told? Does anybody experience a job environment like that where you have low decisional control? Right? If you do, and you have a lot of psychological demand, you are going to be in sort of a high stress job that leads to a lot of burnout. So, waiters, waitresses, firefighters, telephone operators. I would imagine probably well, I don't know. Where do you think an air traffic controller would fit? Where do you think an air traffic controller would fit? Low decision control. What about demand? I'd be curious. So notice says, Demetrio says low decision control. I would say that's probably a demanding job too. So basically what you're suggesting then is that people who are air traffic controllers can affect, air traffic controllers are in a high burnout industry. So when you start selecting jobs, you might want to think about what kind of environment you're going to get yourself in terms of occupational stress. My wife is a hotel manager. She has high psychological demands going all day long. She has corporate office telling her what to do, and she has employees that sometimes don't come to work. So she has low decision control. And so sometimes I would say that hotel managers are in a high stress, burnout kind of occupation, right? So, what are the effects of job stress? Accidents happen in these more stressful environments. People hang out of work and are absent more often. People don't do these jobs very well sometimes because of the burnout. There's an amazing amount of turnover at my wife's hotel, just people not being able, middle managers not being able to handle the pressure because all of her managers are in the same situation. They're having to cover shifts when employees aren't there. They're having to fill out lots of paperwork and forms from the corporate office. So there's a lot of turnover in the hotel management business. And you know what? These people, a lot of times, they cite burnout. They're just exhausted. Their family is angry at them. They quit caring about their job and doing good jobs. And so, you know, these types of industries, if you do choose to get into one, you have to realize that you are putting yourself in a situation where you can experience where you're in what you might call out a burnout industry. Now it depends. As your book suggests, your personality may affect how you feel and how burnt out a job makes you. And really, that's something that you're going to have to decide as you choose your careers. I'm not sure what careers we are choosing. Let me see. Dimitro, you said you were going. Oh man, you weren't doing imaging, were you? You weren't doing X-ray imaging. I forget what your jobs were. But what you want to think about is the amount of stress that you're putting yourself under. Oh, when I went, I had my little cancer scare a couple years ago, and I had to get radiation therapy. And I thought being a radiation therapy tech would be the easiest job in the world. But what I found was that these techs were actually quite stressed out because this machine was so valuable and so many people needed it, that when these people, and you know, bizarrely enough, it was almost uniformly female, these females, as soon as they got to work, they were hopping and jumping all day long. And I thought that it seemed like such a mellow doctor's office when I walked in. But these X-ray techs were under a huge amount of stress because what they were doing was very not dangerous, but very serious. They were working with radiation and big, expensive machines that could be damaged. And they were supposed to, they were supposed to do this all day long, and they worked really, really fast and really, really hard. But at the same time, there were very specific instructions for how they were supposed to do each of these things. So they had low control and high psychological demands. And I was surprised to have met 2 or 3 relatively young radiation therapists who were already looking for a way to get out of it because they were experiencing burnout. I don't know. Do any of you know about your job? Do you have what kind of job are you going to have? Right? Now, if you would, I want you to look through these statements and tell me what kinds of things stress you out about your job. Now, I went through and did this little survey myself, and of these common things listed in your book that people talk about being stressed out by your jobs, I picked the things that I think would probably stress a college professor out. I don't feel all of these, but sometimes at Wake Tech, we feel like we don't have the computers and the technology resources to do our job. There are a lot of people who spend time comparing schedules and think that other teachers get better schedules than them. So we do have perceived inequalities at work. Just like any other office job, we do have office politics and conflicts with supervisors, subordinates, and coworkers. And by difficult customers, I'm talking about problem students that sometimes pop up, students that are either struggling and have good attitudes, but they're just struggling and you have to help them. Or sometimes we get students that get angry and irate and try to cause trouble with us, right? The other thing that bothers us teachers is keeping up with changes in technology. There's always a new test proctoring tool or another website or another web-based program that we have to use. And so I'm always having to retrain myself on a new piece of software. And then sometimes they ask us teachers to do, we teach 6 classes. That's a full-time load. And frankly, that's a lot of classes. You students take 5 classes in the fall and spring, and you know that 5 classes is a lot to take. 6 classes is a lot to teach, and sometimes they'll even ask us to do overtime. So I typically do 7 to 8 classes every semester. And then they'll ask us to be on committees, to create projects, to do papers, to build these things, and we feel a sense of role overload. So if I had to tell you what blue items typically are associated with being a college, what items, stress items are associated with being a college professor, it would probably be these 6 things that I've identified in blue. Things that bother me about work, I would say office politics probably bothers me, and keeping up with changes in technology bothers me, and then the role overload is problematic to me. So those are the 3 things that stress me out at my job. The office politics I hate, the changing technology, and the role overload. Folks, what kinds of things bother you about your job? Do you have any sources of stress that are different than me? So I'd be curious. Do you have lack of privacy, high noise levels? Do you hate rotating shifts? You know, I've had several police officers in my class over the years, and I could not imagine being one of those people that has to work on a rotating shift like police officers do. So I have a brother who works in a police force, and so it's first shift for a while, then you go to second shift, then you go to third shift, and then back to first shift, back to second shift, back to third shift. It's got to be an amazing stressor on a person and a family. Now, sexual harassment is another occupational hazard. But besides the job that you're choosing, right? Stress, an unpredictable economy. Okay. So aside from the job that you may choose and whether or not you have control or how challenging it is, that's a thing you'll have to think about when you choose your vocation. And then Dimitro talks about the unpredictable economy. So he's going to be in software. Did you say software? I think it was, Noda. And the unpredictable economy could definitely affect you. Absolutely. Or I'm not sure. Are you talking about your current job, Noda, or are you talking about the job you're going for? I'd be curious. So we've got these job-related stress that's a factor that you have to think about when picking a job. And then another occupational hazard that your book talks about is sexual harassment. So an unwelcome conduct on the basis of gender. I didn't really think about this, but you can think of it in 2 types: quid pro quo, which is where your boss wants something in order to help you move up or to keep your job. And then there are situations in which people just create a hostile environment by their unwanted sexual behavior, discussion, or material. Oh, you're talking about your current job. I understand. What is your current job, Dimitro? Go ahead and type that in the chat bar. Now, it's interesting. Sexual harassment is fairly widespread. 25% of female and 16.3% of male workers have experienced some form of it. So it's more common for females and males, but those are not non-zero numbers. And the consequences, as they suggest, could include anger, reduced self-esteem, depression, anxiety, lowered productivity, and decreased commitment to the job and employer. I will tell you an interesting story. I remember several years ago, we have mostly females in our department. We have mostly females in our department. And we had a male applicant apply, it must have been 8, 9, 10 years ago. And I remember after his interview, he left, and I remember one of the female teachers turned and said, "Boy, I hope we hire him. It'll be nice to finally have some eye candy around, some more eye candy around the department." And I was just absolutely shocked and astounded by that particular characterization. Now, it didn't bother me too much personally, because I like to make dirty jokes and profoundly incorrect and unprofessional things, but I don't ever say them at work. But what surprised me is that clearly sexist statement made in public garnered no attention at all among the faculty members. And I was wondering, it seems like sometimes maybe we don't even pay attention to the fact that sometimes female behavior can be harassing as well. We typically don't think about it, but I want you to take a moment and to realize, when we're talking about sexual harassment, we're not just talking about harassment of females as we're not just talking about harassment for females. Now, why do I say this? Is it because I think that harassment of females doesn't happen or isn't important? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What I want my male students to understand is that you can be harassed too, and just because you are a male doesn't make it any less legitimate of a complaint or a concern. What I find sometimes is that harassment of males may go unnoticed or unremarked upon simply because we think that it's less intrusion to a male. So, and just for your guys, just remember, you get a place free of harassment as well. Now, how did I engage with that comment, which was kind of sexist by a statement? Is I just avoided it. I didn't even worry about it. So I just focused on myself and just focused on how I responded. But your book's going to talk about is going to talk about different ways of coping to sexual harassment. And what I would suggest you get in the habit of doing is learning how to avoid the number one response to sexual harassment, the avoidance and denial. I probably shouldn't have just let that pass. I probably should have talked to that person after the fact and mentioned to them that was an inappropriate thing to say. But because I was so embarrassed, because I was so shocked and surprised by this female teacher, I just let it pass. But I just want you to be aware that it goes both ways, and that it sometimes it's done for a purpose, like in quid pro quo, but sometimes people just do it in such a way that it makes it just a hostile environment. And so if that person had been a department head, if that person had been in charge, then I might have felt a little bit undervalued. I might have felt the effects of a hostile environment. Now, Dimitro, does your wife work as well? So, back when I was a kid in the early 70s, we still had this semi sort of wonderfully old-fashioned view of families where the male would go out and be the primary breadwinner and the female was the homemaker. She would stay at home and wash clothes and clean the house and cook dinner and take care of all of the chores. And so money was being brought in by one person that only focused on money, and the chores and the domestic role was covered by another person who was only interested in the domestic and current roles. But you folks know that the world is not like that today. Now, both partners in an adult relationship must work in order to survive. It's just an economic necessity these days. So there are more dual earner households ever. And when that happens, that causes them to have to juggle and sometimes shortchange those family responsibilities. And this causes what your book's going to call work-family conflict, which leads to stress, in families and arguments in families. Now, this is especially true if your employers are not flexible in their work hours, and especially if your employer is not flexible in their work hours. Now, I don't know what your experience was, so all I can do is tell you about my experience. So my wife and I were definitely a dual earner household. And in fact, my wife told me as a point of philosophy, she was going to be a full-time employed person with a career. It didn't matter what happened. What she was going to do was to be fully engaged with the workforce. She was not interested in being a housewife or fitting that prototypical model at all. And I had my own career aspirations. Now, what happened was I was a student for many years while she was starting her career. I was in graduate school, and in school you have a little more flexibility. And so I sort of adopted the mom role in the house, the caretaker in the row house, doing the laundry and doing the cooking. And then when we had kids, I started to do the daycare. Now, by the time I finished my degree, she had this great career growing and was making a lot of money. And so we had to make a decision. If I had decided to go on to a 4-year career somewhere else, I would have had to have relocated around the United States. And she would have had to stop her career and find another job. And so we made the decision at the time that I would navigate over to the local community college. Now, this gave us plenty of flexibility because I could work online, I could work at night, I could pretty much choose my schedule. And this flexibility offered by Wake Tech allowed us to resolve our work-family conflict that occurred because we were both dual earner people. Now, she got to have her full-time career and she didn't have to get slowed down by the domestic problems, the domestic duties that hold down a lot of females who work outside the home. On the other hand, my job, because of the amazing flexibility, it was easier for me to handle these types of family related conflicts that would arise. Now, one of the things that you are going to have to think about as you select your jobs is how are you and your partner going to negotiate this work-family conflict. It doesn't matter how much money you earn, the laundry still has to get done. The house still has to get cleaned. Somebody still has to cook some dinners or food, do some sort of shopping, etc., etc. These domestic duties will have to be done. And it just depends on the orientation of the person that you partner up with to determine how you're going to define these duties. Now, if you look underneath you right here, they have these two pie charts which talk about the differences, the slight differences in how different generations deal with this work-life balance. And you'll notice that we have Generation X, which is probably most of you over there on the left. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to have to accept boomerhood. I don't feel like a boomer. I forget what they call us, but you call me a boomer if you like. I don't care. But if you look at the two pie charts here, what they're going to suggest to you, is that my generation is a little more work focused than your generation is. So notice how my attitude, at least in my group, is more, and you can sort of focus on people's attitudes and put them into categories. Do you have those dual-centric households? Do you have work-centric, or are you a family-centric kind of person? And what you're going to see is that there are more family-centric and less work-centric people your age than there are my age. And basically, what this chart is just suggesting is that your generation has a little better grasp on the work-family balance, or has a different take on the work-family balance than does my generation. So my boomer friends and I are going to sit around and complain that you Generation X people don't work hard enough, that you're lazy enough. Actually, listen to my wife, and she'll tell you that none of her employees want to give up their weekends or work 60 hours a week to be in the hotel business, but that's what her business requires. And she keeps saying, wow, these people, in her terms, in her boomer terms, she would call you lazy. On the other hand, you would call yourself balanced, right? And you would probably refer to people like my wife and my generation as workaholics. And it's basically just a different it's a different orientation towards work and life. And I would say it probably represents a time back when at least males could develop sort of a work-centric personality and let everything go and still have a wonderful family life. But it doesn't work that way anymore. People, they're more dual earner families, and people, more females are demanding to have their place in the workforce, which I think is a good thing. Now, most of us say that we want leisure, but we don't, as Americans, look for it so much. So even though we say that having leisure is very important, what you're going to find is that as Americans, we work longer hours and have fewer vacation days than Europeans. Now, I hate to tell you this, but I was hanging out with a bunch of Germans earlier this year in May. I was in Munich for 2 weeks with a lot of Germans, and I was really disappointed to find out that they get a month of vacation, of paid vacation a year. How many weeks of paid vacation do you get a year? Do you get 4 weeks of paid vacation like they do in Germany? And I'm not sure, I think it is, but they also, adults also get 2 weeks in a married family. Each parent gets 2 weeks off a year for children's sick leave. If their kid gets sick, they are allowed to stay home with their child. And if you are a single parent, you get a month of sick leave for your child. So along with having more vacation, they have more time for maternity leave and for sick leave. There's more leisure in these other countries than there is in the United States. Now, I love America and I think it's a wonderful place, but if you think that America is the best at everything, you just need to travel a little bit. And one of the disappointing things that I find about the United States is that United States employers are not very condoning of leisure time and recreation time. Do any of you have a job where you get more than 2 weeks of vacation? I think if you get 2 weeks of vacation, you are very lucky here in the United States. In most places, you get zero vacation, right? What do you do for fun and leisure? What's your thing? What's your thing? Okay, so workaholics. Workaholic is sometimes a word I use to describe my wife. I love you, Ange. Sorry, don't mean it, but you would probably agree. My wife is what you might call a workaholic. She devotes nearly all of her time and a lot of her energy to her jobs. It's just difficult running a business. A hotel because she has a restaurant there. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so she works probably, I'd say, 70 hours a week at work. And then she probably puts in another 10 to 15 at home, taking care of stuff on the computer. So my wife works probably, I don't know, 90 to 100 hours a week, it seems. So I'd call her a workaholic. She devotes a lot of her time and energy to her jobs. Now, there are two types of workaholics your book's going to talk about: enthusiastic workaholics and non-enthusiastic workaholic. I would probably put my wife Angela in the second category. She feels driven to work hard. She emulates her grandmother, who worked a full-time job till she was in her 90s. But I don't think, and she thinks it's important to be a hard worker, but I don't think she lives necessarily for her job. Whereas some people, especially people who are in creative or artistic endeavors, they may work that time simply because they just love the activity that much. I would say my wife is more of a non-enthusiastic workaholic, right? And what your book's going to suggest is people like my wife are going to report lower job satisfaction than, say, an enthusiastic workaholic. But both of these type of workaholics are going to have more family conflict, more problems in their family life than people who are not workaholics. I love the ocean too, Dimitro. Uh, where you're from in Ukraine, where's the nicest beach in Ukraine? That would be down in the southern part of the country. I know it's struggling right now, but where were the nice beaches in Ukraine? Were they near Odessa, or were they farther, or were they closer to the Russian border? Uh, um, where did you go to the beach, Dimitro? I'd be curious to find that out. Okay, so that's really all I wanted to talk about today. So. So if we did, we talked about the link between education and earnings and gender and earnings, but we suggested that having a college degree is not necessarily the key to success now, because there are a lot of college graduates that are underemployed, which is why you folks are smart, I think, for getting your 2-year degree. It's cheaper and you get specifically into a specific kinds of training. We talked about the changes in the workforce, so more women, more minorities, although there still seem to be glass ceilings for some minorities and women. And we talked about some of the occupational strategies I suggested. When you think about your job, think about the qualities of your job that are going to make it one of those high burnout types of jobs. And this makes good sense. This is a really good way to think about the jobs that you're going to be engaged in, and talk to people who do these jobs and find out what their feelings of control and demand are. And so then we talked about the things that stress us out at work. And then we talked a little bit about sexual harassment. Again, the point here I want you to know is you men, you deserve to be treated without being harassed in the environment. And just because we are men does not mean that it does not happen. So make sure that the females and the other men in the workplace are treating you appropriately as well. I know it sounds silly, but I have a couple of incidents in my mind that are too private to talk about, where I can show you how these gender role and the fact that men are supposed to be strong has prevented them from addressing negative behaviors like this. And then I want you to think about work and balance and how you're going to interact between yourself and your partner and take care of the work and home conflict that you are. Next time you want to judge us boomers for being too work centric, remember we grew up in a world where it was more likely to have only a single earner family rather than a dual earner family. Keep in mind, America's a wonderful place, but in terms of vacation and leisure, American industry is not nearly as conducive to a work-family balance as are other countries, especially European countries with which we compare ourselves to. All right, and please, for the goodness sake, do not be a workaholic. Okay, that's all I wanted to say today. I hope Crimea and close to Odessa. Okay, so that would be more the eastern part of. All right, I'd always wondered where the cool beaches were. Oh, so wait a minute, that's over on. So you're talking not in the middle, so way down in the eastern part, and then over there in the western part near Crimea. Okay, Odessa's in the eastern part, right? Or is that the western part? I'll have to go back and look at my map. All right, groovy. Thanks, Dimitro. Hey, folks, don't forget to keep working on your discussion boards this week and your chapter quiz. I'll have the PowerPoints up for tomorrow's lecture, tomorrow and Thursday's lecture sometime later today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a text or an email. Otherwise, have a great day and try to stay out of the heat. Take care.